The talk that I'm doing today is the Presidio Goes Digital. And though digital is something that so many arts, visual arts, cultural groups in the community have been doing over the last year or so, what does it really mean? What is digital? Well, the definition I found to be most appropriate for my talk tonight was it's media that are encoded in machine readable formats. So as a consequence, what we're doing is we're looking at pictures. When I first began to realize this concept existed was here at the Presidio about 6 years ago, and it was Christmas. We had just come out of doing Las Posadas in cooperation with Carrillo School. There was an evening in the middle in which the whole Presidio was in lights, and the celebration of lights was going to happen the next day. So I suggested to Gene and others on the board that we do a Christmas story. And the Christmas story was set in 1775, the founding of the Presidio here in Tucson. Because you know, that same year, the De Anza expedition left from just south of Tubac to go and found the Presidio at San Francisco. And with them was a woman who we celebrate to this day in the Black community. So at that time, in cooperation with Barbia Williams Performing Arts Company, almost exactly to this day, 6 years ago, I saw something that would change my perception of historical presentations forever. And I'd just like to show you a short portion of a video of that evening. If I can get my technology to work here, and that's one of the problems with digital.
In October 1775, Lieutenant Colonel Juan Batista de Anza led a group of 300 women, children, soldiers on an amazing journey found Presidio near San Francisco Bay. I want to thank Tucson Presidio Trust for Historic Preservation, Arizona Heritage Tours, putting on this presentation by the Barbia Williams Performing Company to tell this story of an epic journey. We are telling the story through the eyes of a young woman named Maria Feliciana Arbejo. She is a mulata libre, a free Black woman, walks with her 2 children because she has just been widowed, and may be the first woman of African descent to enter what is now California. Join us in hearing her story of courage and fortitude.
Maria Feliciana Arbejo. She was born in 1752 in the Villa de Culiacan, Mexico. She married Jose Gutierrez around 1768. He was a soldado, a soldier under De Anza's command. The couple decided to join the expedition for a better life for their family. Fewer restrictions. Yet right before the October 23rd, 1775 departure date, Jose was killed in an Indian attack on the caravan. Still Feliciano, she decided that she would go with her two young daughters to go on the journey.
If my two daughters, Tomasa and Estequia, can survive this journey, we can go through. If we are able to survive 2 hurricanes, the cholera plague, and the death of my beloved husband, I believe we are ready for this journey ahead of us.
From that day, I began to see static presentations of historical stories of African Americans in the Southwest as a moving, flowing drama of dance and emotion. And from all my experiences in film and video production, that storytelling was a combination of 3 elements: technology, content, and people. I learned I'm knowledgeable about 2. Technology, not so much. However, my partner, the late Andre Newman, became so excited that he began discussing little else. Our weekly meetings became demonstrations of cardboard 3D glasses and the capture of videos of his friends singing in the desert west of Tucson with virtual reality goggles. He got so excited, he flew to Morocco to research one of the historical figures, Esteban. Esteban, as many of you already know, is the first non-native person to come to what is now present-day Arizona. An African person who had walked all the way from Florida to Mexico City between 1528 and 1536, and then departed on another journey, which brought him into present-day Arizona and Zuni, where he disappeared. Andre talks to his descendants, filmed his origin site, and then Andre, in his research, introduced us to a person we had heard of earlier while working at the University of Arizona Museum of Art, a man named Dr. Brian Carter for the Center of Digital Humanities. So if you want to know about volumetric capture and 3D scans and more, talk to Dr. Carter or one of his interns like Miles Gordon and Brianna Andrews. But if you want to know about content and you want to know about people in history, talk to me. Because now we are becoming extremely excited here at the Presidio because we realize that in these times where we have to distance each other, lock down, and all the other things that this pandemic has caused us to do, that through media, we can reach out to not only the people that we talked to before, but a larger group and the world beyond. Andre and I have been producing static lectures in historic uniforms and costumes for the Presidio, Pima County Libraries, Canoa Ranch, Inuit Corporation, Tucson Museum of Art, and the Black Pilots of America for 5 years before the pandemic struck. 2019 through 2020 was our best year ever in our business called Arizona Heritage Tours. But luckily, we already met Dr. Carter. And being outdoor people who love to bike and hike the desert, we were already anxious for more dynamic presentations of our content. When the pandemic emerged in March 2020, we didn't miss a beat. With the support of the Presidio, we ran into Bill Ponder of the Arizona Historical Museum, who saw immediately that a virtual tour of the museum would help the donors, patrons, and the public maintain interest, and asked us to produce a series of scenes for the museum on the life of Henry Flipper, the first Black graduate of West Point. Flipper had come to Arizona late in the 1800s, and the resulting images became another series of storyboards we had produced. We call them storyboards because we realized that a younger audience needed to have younger figures to emulate. And so our pictures and our videos had to become younger. And much more dynamic. Before we're finished today, we'll show you part of those pictures that were done at the Arizona Historical Museum and give you a sense of where we're going in the future, because this journey that we have departed on here in the Presidio is just beginning. We're just beginning to understand the potential that digital media can bring to our efforts over the years and all the pictures we've already done. The Presidio already has at least 5 or more videos on YouTube. But now we have the opportunity to make them come alive on another level through volumetric capture, through 3D scanning, and all the media that Dr. Carter and the Center for Digital Humanities can bring to agencies like the Presidio. When my wife Sydney and I produced another video with our friend and fellow volunteer here at the Presidio, Rachel Pollock, for Tucson Meet Yourself, the YWCA, the University of Arizona Department of Social and Behavioral Sciences, at Mission Gardens, we really realized we were onto something. But we also realized that each entity that goes digital has unique needs and unique content that must be presented authentically and accurately. And also, such presentations must complement the ambience of the venue and the nature of the characters. So for example, those wonderful 3D glasses made of cardboard that are now much less expensive than they were before would work very well for most locations, but might be very distracting on a second Saturday here at the Presidio, when the soldiers are marching around and 20 to 30 people dressed in costume makes you feel like you're in 1780. To have a person wandering around looking at a pair of goggles may not be what we need to enhance our digital footprint here at the Presidio. I learned long ago as a teenager working for Colonial Williamsburg in Virginia that historical interpreters have 3 different levels in approaching their craft. This insight was reinforced to me here at the Presidio and by my Buffalo Soldier colleagues when I came west 40 years ago. A historical interpreter in uniform can be one of 3 things. They can be themselves in historical attire. They can be themselves while quoting an actual character, or they can stay in character in a role from the historical past. They are actors, and acting is an art not all of us are comfortable with. Many current volunteers and reenactors have a problem with being actors, not only for the historical implications, but also because of political correctness. Talking to Charles Young and Joseph Bailey, Buffalo Soldiers, and historical interpreters, I said, you all are reenactors. You even ride on horseback. And they said, oh no, Michael, we learned our lesson once when we were doing a presentation with the Apache. We're not sure we want to go back and talk about what happened to all of us during that period. So I became very sensitive to the fact that we have to be very careful as we present our histories to one another, because some of it is not as pleasant as it might have been. Other issues might also arise. For example, at 73, I'm getting much too old to play characters of 27. There's nobody here at the Presidio who has the skills and makeup artistry to change that. So through Dr. Carter and the University of Arizona, we're recruiting interns, one of which you can see in the background of the picture on your screen. One of our earliest interns Ms. Belin has done several presentations with us. As has this gentleman, myself. And my late partner, Andre Newman. The backdrop, as you could see from the first video in December of 2014, gives us a sense of history that no other place in the city can give us. And as we get into more video formats, we will begin to see how important this location is beyond all the things the Presidio has done up until this point. But if we go back to the first presentation that we viewed by the Barbia Williams Performing Arts Company, or a capture of Friday at the Fort, Toys and Games, filmed last week by my wife Sydney and Jean Baxter here in the Presidio, we realize how important accuracy and authenticity is for the digital world. If you looked at those pictures from the Barbia Williams Performance Company, you may not have noticed. But over time, somebody will notice. The children had on tennis shoes, and Nike and Adidas didn't exist in 1780. Now, we're just trying to portray a young person here in Tucson for Friday at the Fort, wearing tennis shoes that they have put together as part of their costume for a presentation in their homes because they're no longer in school in person. And they've made this wonderful effort to look authentic. That's okay. But if we send it out to a larger group, we have to remember authenticity, accuracy, and respect for the character has to be part of the essence of the digital world that we're now entering. As does the language. When training the interns from the U of A and talking to them about their auditions, I noticed that in their auditions, they were using words that may not have existed in 1780. I mean, really, when did the words fantastic, awesome, and wow appear? And how do you get Spanish feeling into a video, especially when you're only going to be given 2 minutes, which is what we're looking at for the future videos we're doing in cooperation with the University of Arizona. 2 minutes? How much can you do in 2 minutes? Maybe the question should be, because we are all Westerners and we're representing a horse culture from the past, how much can you do in 8 seconds or 13.52 seconds? What are those numbers, you ask? It's how long you got to stay on a bull to score points in the rodeo. And the fastest barrel racer, many of whom come from Marana. Who says you can't do dramatic presentations in a short period of time? And that is our challenge. We have 9 stories to tell of African Americans. We have even more stories to tell of others who came to the Presidio, because there were so few of us here during the period that we're representing, especially during the Spanish colonial period, that if you tell one person's story, you're really telling the story of everybody who was there at that particular place in time. We formed a culture of cooperation because of our need for survival. And that now is being carried on by the volunteers at the Presidio as we move forward into the future. We could use a lot more of that right now. Of these 9 stories of African Americans on the Santa Cruz River, We will hopefully produce, because of their popularity, longer versions, gain more funding, so that our other community partners will also have the ability, because people are fascinated by this technology and how they can present their particular historical records and items. As far as we are concerned, Esteban will become a larger story. Maria Feliciana Arbayo, hopefully, will have more than 2 minutes. And the first soldier of African descent of the Presidio, Francisco Javier Marquez, will hopefully have a story. There are numerous Buffalo Soldier stories, and one of the things that Buffalo Soldiers are beginning to teach us is that this was a horse culture. Everybody depended on the horse. And there's not enough room here in the Presidio for horses, but we can take pictures of horses and show them on the website digitally. Imagine seeing some of our volunteers like Rick Collins riding up to you on horseback to celebrate the Yanza Days down near the Canoa Ranch. It's not something we can capture today in the Presidio, but we will be able to capture that digitally. Henry Flipper, which you'll see in a minute as one of our closing for this particular presentation, has numerous stories that could be told, as does Charles Young, the third Black graduate of West Point, who came here to chase Pancho Villa in 1917. The history of people that can be shown digitally is rich here in the Southwest. And we found, besides Maria Feliciana Arbayo and Isabel de Oliveira, who preceded her as one of the courageous women of the West, we have a whole series on women of the West, which sometimes are overlooked by us in the historical realm. And stories of immigrants and migrants, and stories of the Black Renaissance that's occurring here in Tucson that seems to be being missed by many of us in the sadness that we feel during this harsh time. These stories capture not just the African-American experience, but the experiences of us all as we live here in the desert, along the banks of the Santa Cruz. And as Cesar Chavez has told us, when one group elevates their history, they do not have to disparage the history of others. What will happen to these visual renderings? I think, first of all, we must ensure that these images stay in the public record, so our community partners all have access to the things that we are bringing to the fore through this new technology. And they have to be at no cost to citizens throughout our community and the world. By using existing technology, a marker can be embedded in an image we can set up in sites throughout the community where a visitor can point their cell phone at the marker or the picture and go to a menu to see any of a variety of scenes that have been produced along with other resources to study and the stories that are being told. Numerous community organizations besides the Presidio, like the Dunbar Pavilion, Quincy Douglas Library and Community Center, Buffalo Soldier Monument Project, schools throughout our community that we've already been reaching out to through Friday at the Fort programs, and now the Juneteenth experience are all fascinated by the possibilities of this new technology. And they express strong interest in such a link if the cost can be borne. Finally, we must ensure that a child of limited resources can access these stories and their teachers have lesson plans and resources to deliver them to those children who can no longer attend school in person. We can see this through the project we did with the Arizona Historical Museum. This is Bill Ponder, director of the Arizona Historical Museum. And as you can see, this is the technology that we'll see in the future in one of its most basic forms. Because we can not only see Bill, and if the volume were turned up, hear his talk, which you might want to go to the Arizona Historical Museum website to see, but we'll see visuals like this here at the Presidio, and in other locations throughout. And in each location throughout the city, we'll be able to click on markers, go to a menu, and experience not only the museum, but other stories. By clicking on a menu, as you can see, we could be talking about Henry Flipper. We could talk about his career as a surveyor of the John Slaughter Ranch, the Buffalo Soldiers in Geronimo, his experience as a mining engineer, and the anonymous Buffalo Soldier, played here by Andre Newman. The possibilities are endless, but we should remember technology is not the end. Content and representing people accurately is the end goal. And technology can present it only if the content is useful to the viewer. Here we see the late Andre Newman playing Henry Flipper in his role as a mining engineer. And as you can see, we could go all the way around Andre and pick out different parts of the scene he's in from different directions. We could take objects from the background and through a 3D scan, have the viewer actually see those objects from all sides, which we've already done with several items here in the Presidio. So our possibilities in the digital world are beyond our imagining at this point in time. But if responsible people develop content and stories accurately and authentically, we can develop the content through this new technology in many different formats that are appropriate to the different venues that are crying out for a way to reach people somewhat differently than we had before, when in-person gatherings were so prevalent in the world of the arts here in Tucson. We here at the Presidio are some creators of that effort, working as a culture of cooperation to ensure that that cooperation becomes something celebrated by future generations. Thank you. Questions?
Michael, still there?
Yes.
What I was looking at was, and what's interesting is the ability to take Tucson and many of his historical sites and display them as digital video utilizing today's media.
Yeah, that's exactly it. This is what Willie Belin, who just asked a question, in case you didn't hear it, was that many historical sites can use this same media, but at the same time, they can transfer it to others groups using markers that then link us as a community in ways that we've never been linked before. Because before this new technology came to the fore, people at the Presidio on a second Saturday could not be talking to somebody at Kinsey Douglas Library, even in real time, let alone days after the event. So the technology has amazing potential to help us tell our story on a much broader level to people that are not even here in the Presidio in person. Was that your question, Willie?
Well, yeah, it's more of a comment and a question. You know, it's kind of like, you know, back in the day, you know, when a lot of our historical stuff was going on, you know, all we had was paper and pen. Well, not even pen, basically, you know, just paper and something to scratch a mark on. You know, now we've got, you know, technology-wise up to streaming video. And what we would like to be able to do is take that historic, you know, not lose our culture, not lose our history, but use the medium that people currently have to display it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we're seeing a lot of entities, because I'm focused on the entities like the Presidio. And you just mentioned the other day that places like Old Tucson are shutting down because there's no way to communicate that story to a larger audience unless you go there. With digital kinds of technology, you could do reenactments in Old Tucson that could be delivered to anybody. And a community resource been with years could be salvaged instead of being shut down and decay over time.
You know, true, and that's how I envision us saving our history. Because you're right, you know, people from all over the world love coming to Old Tucson, but with this current pandemic, no one's coming to the U.S., no one's going to Old Tucson. However, by using digital media, we can still show Old Tucson and the reenactments, and therefore save that history.
You're exactly right. And my only caution would be that we really look at the content and the people who are delivering the content as the important element. Technology is like a vehicle. It's like a car. You know, if you take the driver out of the car and it's not a driverless car, the car's not going anywhere. So what you want to do is make sure that we continue to appreciate the importance of content and people delivering content and the accuracy and authenticity of their stories, especially as we bring new people like young children into this new historical world, because that's really our target group. If we can get young children to appreciate history on another level, they will then transfer it to the next generation. And when you talk to a lot of children or adults like myself who grew up, it wasn't until I became a reenactor at Colonial Williamsburg that I began to appreciate history. I wasn't sure I wanted to keep on reading books that told me how many horses had died at Gettysburg. What I wanted to do was feel the emotions of the people that we were talking about and the lives that they lived and what they went through. And this gives us an opportunity to do that, especially for young children.
I agree. You're right. It's extremely critical that, you know, it's not just a matter of showing the history, but making sure the history that we're showing is accurate.
Yeah, I can't agree more.
additional resources will be needed at the Presidio to feature these finished I can't say it. Thank you.
Yeah, the question is what other resources will be needed at the Presidio and these other locations in order to pursue this? And I think it's community cooperation. If you get enough people who are interested together to begin to promote grants like the grant that we have already received here at the Presidio and through the Arizona Humanities Council and the National Endowment for the Humanities, to pursue these kinds of projects, I think we have the ability to move forward. And one of the things I've noticed in my work with nonprofits here in Tucson is that oftentimes they are competing for the same resources. If in the digital world we began cooperating with this for the same resources, we could then be able to tell multiple stories using the University of Arizona as a conduit for development because of the knowledge base. We're really happy at the Presidio with the projects I'm working on that we have now interns that are going to be paid out of these grants for their internships. So they will be rewarded for their efforts. And we get a younger generation coming in with professional kinds of skills like acting, like video production, that will then enable us to move forward. So we not only need the people, the young people that come on board, but we also need support from larger entities like National Endowment for the Humanities and Arizona Humanities Council to support these kinds of efforts. Because many times what's happening is I think that people are misunderstanding. They let the technology overwhelm them and then give up and throw up their hands and say this can't be done, rather than seeing that it is being done as we speak. We done? Thank you again, and thank the Presidio and my friends at the Presidio, particularly Jean Baxter, Kate Avalos, and Rick Collins for inspiring me on this journey.
Thank you, Michael, so very, very much. It was wonderful to hear about this tonight. Some of the things Michael was talking about, we have been filming just recently, and we hope to have some of those things up online for teachers to pull into their classrooms starting in January. So do watch the website. Also watch the website for upcoming events. Because we are an outside venue, we are able to do special projects and things here at the Presidio that the public can attend. So please do watch the website. And then of course, we hope you will join us again in January 16th at 7 o'clock. Again, a Zoom presentation. And we will be talking about the TB preventoriums for children here in Tucson. Again, from the Presidio, we wish you the happiest of holidays, and we look forward to the new year when we can all be together in person once again. Thank you and good night.